Hey gang, your old pal Clay here, Mountain Music Exchange, and I have with me, new from NAMM 2025, the all-new Fender Standard Series Stratocaster. Check that out. This color here is in Candy Cola. These guys run $5.99. They are I was really surprised for a few reasons that we'll get into here shortly. We're going to talk about this guitar from top to bottom. We are going to go all over its specs and features and what separates this from other guitars in the Fender lineup. And so without further ado, I suppose we could probably start doing that now, huh gang? There has been a bit of a clamor since the prices of goods and services have raised substantially in the last few years for something that takes us back to basics, right? Something that takes us back to where, you know, a Fender Standard Stratocaster, you know, we've always got We've had the original standards that were made in Mexico. Those evolved into the Player Series, and those have sort of become a little bit more upscale with different features and things as time has gone on, and they have raised in price just a little bit over time since their debut. These are $5.99, and before I get into anything else on this guitar, I will tell you that it is indeed crafted in Indonesia, made in Indonesia, in fact. And I think I'm going to be the first to tell you that before I picked this guitar up, I groaned a little bit. And I was like, oh no, this is a Squire that's got a Fender, you know, water slide decal instead, right? And I'm really glad that I've got to put hands on these because that is not the case at all. I realize that there will be a subset of purists, for example, who will groan a little bit about the situation at hand here, right? But if you just take this at its dollar for dollar price point as a guitar, and its specs, features, how it feels, how it sounds, and how it plays, I mean, I think we're pretty much right there. This feels like, and is similarly spec'd to, and we'll talk about some of the differences in just a moment, but this feels like a Standard Series Fender guitar. If you happen to remember the pre-Player Series standard guitars from Fender, the Strats, the Tellys, the basses, right? This is that feel. It has a satin neck. It's, you know, that very comfortable, very familiar Fender C-shaped profile. And it also this has a maple fingerboard, but now some of the other ones have, instead of rosewood like you would see on a Player Series or an old standard, they do have Indian laurel. And if you've seen any of the old videos here on the channel, not even necessarily old per se, but if you've seen any of the other videos here on the channel, specifically where I'm talking about other brands that use Indian laurel, you'll know I'm actually pretty fond of it. I think if you're not going to use rosewood, Indian laurel is probably the place that I would go to in its place, like as a substitute, right? But anyway, let's talk about this. This satin neck not only feels like the traditional Fender Standard satin neck that you remember from the days of yore, right? But this has an extremely rounded fretboard here. This is really comfortable. There is absolutely no fret sprout here, right? And at $5.99, I think that this is in competition for possibly the best guitar for that dollar right now, if that makes sense to you folks watching out there. I think it's a good guitar. If you just take it on its own merit and don't look at all that other baloney, you know, or listen to the noise, so to speak, right? This is a really good guitar. The only gripe that I have is such a nitpicky gripe, really. And that is simply that the Fender logo is completely black. I realize some old 90s standards did that, but I really wish, you know, maybe there was a little bit more character to it. But really, at the end of the day, that doesn't change what this guitar is, how this guitar sounds, and how this guitar feels. I will also say that out of the box, this action that I'm using right now, this is directly out of the box, and I haven't set it up, or Tex haven't set it up. And again, if you've seen any of my older videos, you know that I'm kind of a stickler for low action, straight neck kind of thing, right? This is eminently playable right out of the box, which I think is fantastic for a guitar at this price point. Sometimes it's a little hit and miss, and I haven't honestly felt or held a ton of the other Fender Standards that we've received in. There'll also be a Telecaster video coming out very shortly, maybe in the next couple of days from when you see this one. And so I can't speak for all of them, but I can speak for this one, which I have in my hands here, and I think that it feels fantastic. And I really actually like the satin fingerboard. I know for a long time, Fender had gone to the sort of glossy fingerboard with the satin, you know, for aesthetic up front, and the sort of snap that you get from a bit of a glossy fingerboard, and then the fast neck action back here, right? And I really kind of miss those older Standards that had a completely satin neck and fingerboard, and this has it. I like it. You still do get a gloss finish over the headstock, so you still get a quality look. It's not super tinted, as you can kind of see here in the video, right? But, I mean, I think we kind of reserve those things for something akin to a vintage spec style guitar anyway. But there's enough tint here that it doesn't look off-puttingly white, right? Like the maple here is not off-puttingly white, bright, or screams cost-cutting in any way. And I think that might be one of the benefits of this guitar being made outside of the standard sort of where your mind takes you to Fender, right? It's going to be made in Mexico, or it's going to be made in Corona in the US, right? And I think because they could go a little bit outside the box and make this somewhere else, I think it allowed them to have a little bit more freedom to pay attention to detail and still stay in this price point and still feel like a Fender and have Fender quality. And it does have Fender quality. But anyway, now that that little rant is over, let's go top to bottom and let's play this thing a little bit, okay? So, top here you see you do have that black Fender logo, which I'm not gonna lie, may or may not grow on me over time. I tend to do that very often. Not like change and then sort of get a little more susceptible to it as time goes on. And then you have the Fender Standard tuners that you'll see from years and years and years of Fender American guitars, Fender Mexican guitars, of various ranges, right? And I think it's just a tried and true tuner. They work really well. You have one single string tree here. You also have a micarta nut here sitting on top of a 9.5-inch radius fingerboard. And let's see, do we have, wait, now the older Standards had 21 frets. Then the Player Series moved that up to 22. And I've not counted the frets yet, so let's count. Let's see, we've got 12, 15, 17, 19, 20, wait a second, 12, 15, 17, 19, 20. So this is still a 21 fret. This is very much akin to the original Fender Standard, which I think is pretty interesting. You may or may not like that. For my play style on a personal level, I barely need to work my way that far up the register, and that may be, you know, a reflection on me as a player and my ability, but I think the majority of people will still find this just fine at, you know, 21 frets, unless you can really make this bottom part of the neck work. I wouldn't try that. But anyway, I digress. We have 3 Fender Standard single coils here. These are ceramic magnet pickups, and I think they sound really good considering, right? I actually will go so far as to say, and you just heard me play a little bit on this in the like in the 2 position, right? Which is the neck and middle pickup combined. In my opinion, the older Standards had sort of a muddy sound about them in that position. And this one doesn't. It actually sounds like you would sort of expect a more high-end Stratocaster to sound, right? We still have our volume, tone. We have, you know, standard 5-way toggle switch here. And this bridge actually is another thing that I was sort of talking about when I mentioned that there's a little room for breathing as far as, you know, attention to detail or different things you could add. This is the 2-point bridge. Now, the 2-point bridge is a little more stable. I think we've proven that over time with the American series, the Player series, than your standard old school, like 6-screw traditional style bridge. And another thing, these saddles are really nice. They look really thick. They look like they would, you know, I'm not sure what they're made of. If you know, let me know in the comments below. But I'm not sure exactly what they're made of, but they are thick. They look like they would, you know, produce more vibration, more tone. If you remember from some years back, there was always this perception that more mass was more tone, right? And I think they've really hit the nail on the head here with these. I love these saddles. They remind me not of a traditional bent steel saddle that you would see on a typical Fender Standard Player American Series guitar, right? They remind me of something like the Ultra Series guitars, or, you know, even going further back from that, the Elites or the Deluxes. And so I really like this. And I can also tell I haven't really taken a whammy bar and just dive bombed this thing, but you can, you know, hear earlier, I did use the tremolo a little bit from back here, and it sounded perfectly fine to me, and it stayed in tune perfectly fine. So very cool stuff. Standard 4-bolt neck plate here on the back of this Candy Cola Stratocaster. One thing I do miss is the skunk stripe. But that being said, like, you, the player, are the only person that knows that's there. What we probably can do here now is just give you guys a few ideas of the tones. I'm going to switch my trusty Helix named Felix over to something like a Fender Deluxe style amp. I'm going to be using a little bit of slap delay and a little bit of spring reverb. Now, this is just going to be for depth, right? And in doing that, I think what I can do here is give you guys an idea of what most people are going to play this on clean. I realize that with these added effects, it's not 100% clean, but I think most people are not just going to play a straight clean guitar with absolutely no depth on it most of the time, if that makes sense. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Oh, and before I get started, by the way, gang, it is that time of the video. It is the shameless like and subscribe plea. If you like the content here on the channel, we have a plethora of older videos for you to check out if maybe you've picked up a new guitar or even a used guitar. Give us a like and a subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. It really, really helps out the channel, and it's absolutely no cost to you. We have a ton of videos that we can show you from years and years worth of content here on the channel, and we hope you like and enjoy those as well. And with that being said, gang, let's get on and listen to this guitar and hear what magic it can make. All right, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch up all the way up. We're on clean with a little bit of spring reverb and slap delay on the neck pickup alone. So I thought that was pretty warm, all things considered very clear. I think we'll get a better idea when we add some gain to it later as to whether or not it's going to sort of muddy up or get weird on us being the ceramic magnet pickup, right, on a single coil. So now let's check out the middle and neck positions here. Yeah, not too shabby. Very clean, very warm. Kind of everything I think you would expect from most Fender guitars most of the time, right? So we're going to try out now on the middle position, single. I'm not sure what I expect from this because I haven't really run this through my old buddy Felix the Helix here to check it out. So let's find out what we can do here. That was actually, I really enjoyed that. There's not a tone here that I've gone through so far that I didn't really enjoy. So let's try position 4 now, which is going to be the middle and bridge positions, and see how that works out for us. This is another position, by the way. I really like these sort of in-between positions. So before I really go any further, I'll just say that I really prefer to play a Strat in positions 2 and positions 4. I think that's where you sort of obviously get that sort of Strat sound. But also, I think it's a good way to test out a Stratocaster to see how stratty it really is, or if it's, you know, if it's going to get muddy, or if it's going to sound weird, or, you know, you lose volume sometimes, or anything like that. So let's see what we got here. I really like the twang on that, actually. Kind of surprised at how much twang it has. I don't know why I'm surprised like that. It just sounds like, I feel like a Strat should sound on a very clean style amp in that position. But so far, it's checking all the boxes, I think, to really meet that standard sound, if that makes sense. You know, when you say standard, it sort of means that it has to be at a certain level or above. It can't be subpar. It can't feel like a budget guitar, because this is the standard, right? And everything else, it only goes up from here. And also, to say standard too means that this is a guitar that you can play and continue to play and keep playing and maybe never have to actually grow out of, because this is the standard. This is the bar. And this guitar at $599 really seems to meet that so far. We're gonna do the bridge now, by the way. Just, I didn't clarify that, but here we are. All right, so I think that's a pretty good sort of encapsulation of what the clean should sound like on a Fender guitar in general. I think this pretty much knocks everything out perfectly in that respect. Everything stayed really clean. Even the bridge pickup, which is typically on a Stratocaster, especially some older ones, known to sort of be a little bit untamable, so to speak, right? Everything on 10 here seems to hold up very well. It doesn't seem to give me any sort of, I don't get that vibe that it's not tameable, right? So with that being said, let's see if it's tame or untame on like maybe a Marshall setting. We're gonna try the Brit 2203 that's built into the Helix here, and we're gonna take that and use it to sort of gauge how muddy this may or may not get. And another reason is too, just to give you guys some idea of what this sounds like with sort of your most basic standard sort of amp types. So we've got like a Fender clean, and then we've got a Marshall dirty, right? So let's go back up to the neck. We're gonna switch over on trusty old Felix here to that Brit 2203 style amp and see what we've got here. Now we're also gonna have a little bit of spring reverb and a little bit of slap on this, again, just for depth, and see where this takes us. So without further ado, let's try this out. We're gonna go back up to the neck. Pretty good. That's not really bad at all. One thing I like about that sound is that it's extremely, because of the ceramic magnet, there is a crispness to it. Crispness, not Christmas. I'm not sure which one I said. Crispness to it that really sort of helps it kind of maybe cut through a mix. The highs are a little bit more pronounced, but on the neck position, you've still got that low end part of that sort of Strat single coil spectrum that sounds really good. So that was just on the neck and middle positions, and that's another thing, like it doesn't sound remotely, there's no mud there. It's very clean, very crisp, very just, everything is where it sort of should be in the sonic spectrum, I guess, in the tonal spectrum. I've played some old standards before, especially on high gain, and in those favorite two positions of mine, for whatever reason, maybe it was because of the type of pickup used in that versus this, it always felt a little bit too muddy for me, and that was one reason I always tried to move on up to sort of the next tier of a Fender guitar, for example, right? But this didn't sound like that at all. I mean, you can hear everything's very clean, very crisp. In a chord, for example, you can hear every single, you can hear the note separation between strings. And I'll be honest with you, even at that $5.99 price point, that's not always terribly easy to do, right? Especially if you're trying to get that sort of crisp, jangly tone. There aren't a lot of guitars, in my opinion, at this price point that really do that. So let's try that neck. I'm sorry, it's not going to be the neck position. Let's try the middle position out. See how that sounds. I can tell you, the closer I get to the bridge on this, the more I feel like this is really actually going to rock pretty good as we sort of get closer there. That middle position sounded kind of full. I don't want to say in like a humbucker way, but I think that it would be a really good rock rhythm position rather than just go all the way up, say to the neck, for example. So let's go closer to the bridge, closer to that sort of lead rock sound that you might want, and see what position 4 sounds like now. Okay, all right, I'm getting closer to like sort of what is for me the bridge position with a gain amp is like the promised land, right? And I'm getting much closer there. I think this gives me a lot of, and yes, I know during the sort of like the years that you think of with Richie Blackmore, for example, right? I think this, you know, he didn't have necessarily a middle pickup always, but I think this does give me that sort of, you know, 2 or 4 position Richie Blackmore kind of sound. And I don't think I really expected that from this guitar, honestly. But here we are. This has, like I said, it's got good action. It's not the lowest action in the world, but it is eminently playable action, like I said before. This is strung up with 9 to 42 strings, and quite frankly, most of the time I find myself wanting to change that out on a Stratocaster. Here, I don't necessarily feel like that's the case. I actually think it helps with crazy bends, and crazy just keeps the guitar feeling sort of slinky and light. So, anyway, but let's go to the bridge position and finally do the thing I've wanted to do. I like that. Actually, I really like that. It still sounds, I mean, it rocks, you know, it doesn't do that whole big giant thick humbucker thing. We do have a spotlight for that one coming up though soon. So there is an HSS version of this guitar, and we're going to talk about that one later in the week, this very week. So keep an eye out for that one. But it does have a very sort of Strat bridge pickup. It doesn't sound out of control. I'm on, you know, 10 everywhere, and it still is just like on the edge of being sort of untamed, right? One thing I want to mention too, by the way, the sustain on this has been phenomenal for a guitar with 9s, right? It's just been fantastic, with gain especially, but also in the cleans, like everything just sort of holds really well, notes and chords hang in there pretty good. All right, gang, so that has been the general rundown and spotlight of the all-new 2025 Fender Standard Stratocaster. Like I said, be on the lookout for the HSS spotlight of this video, of this guitar, whichever one. We're doing things, right? Be on the lookout for the HSS version of this guitar as well, and we are also going to be doing a rundown of the Telecaster, which I'm very excited about. That one should be the next one. It's definitely going to be the next one I film. Whether or not it's going to be the next one you see, not sure. But that's got us on this one, gang. I really enjoyed this guitar a lot more than I thought that I would. This really does feel standard to me, right? And I think you'll feel the same, really, if you check these out. Don't pay attention to sort of the peanut gallery that I'm sure. Now, I haven't read anything personally on it. I just feel like being in the guitar sort of milieu for quite some time now that, you know, I've seen this sort of thing come up, right? But don't pay attention to that. Play this, hold this, hear this, and I think that will help you decide really what the guitar might be able to do for you. That's got us on this one, gang. Check us out on mountainmusicexchange.com. That's where you can check out that new arrivals section. That's where you can see all of our new and used gear that comes into the store. We don't show out of stock items, so if you see it on our website, we have it in stock. Free shipping over $49. And don't forget to check us out on our other social media as well. That's going to be Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. And yes, we are still on the top, gang. Don't be afraid. We're there. And we will still be bringing you content as well. Haas just put up a new video. Make sure to check that out. It was really funny. And that's got us on this one, gang. I'm Clay. You rock. And wherever you're at, whatever it is that you're doing, make it loud. See you, crew.